Greetings, students. Today, we are meeting with two exciting professionals who are working with JSTOR and talking about some of JSTOR's affordances, as well as some of the coming features that I think we'll be excited about. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they are new friends of mine, and I have a feeling they will share things that may get you excited about some of the new ways to be an information professional right now. So, shall we start with Beth?
Sure. Hi, I'm Beth LaPensee. I am a principal product manager at JSTOR, and my primary area of focus for many years has been on search and discovery, content discovery across JSTOR and outside of JSTOR. I came into this position starting over 20 years ago, coming out of library school. I went to Wayne State to get my master's in library science there. And I started at JSTOR all those years ago in a librarian position that evolved into the user experience job, which I was manager of for many years, and then ultimately fell into product management, where I am today. And so over the past year or so, my search team has been very deeply involved in generative AI and exploring and understanding how we might be able to leverage that technology to solve problems for our users.
Great. And my other new friend is?
My name is Diba Kaya. I'm currently at JSTOR working very closely with Beth and our search teams. So I came to JSTOR a few years ago, mainly from big tech. And so I've been working in product and research for over 10 years. My experience has really been in big tech, so at Google and at Amazon, and coming to this not-for-profit and really being mission-based has been incredible. And the product development and user centricity that we have here is just incredible. And so what I do as a researcher is try to ground our product development as much as possible into the actual experience that people are having. So that when we're creating features, when we're creating tools, when we're creating solving or problems, any of that kind of thing, we're actually doing it from a very grounded perspective. So we help derive metrics, we help kind of create the definitions around models, so that we can really create things that people are actually using and need.
Great. Now, for some of my students who are kind of new to the idea of databases, this is early in the semester. Can you tell us what we're talking about here? What is JSTOR? I've got the mug. And my students may imagine at this point that I'm a huge fan, but what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so I can give you a little background on JSTOR. We started just before I started working there, about 1996 or so, 95. JSTOR started as a solution to essentially library space problems. So we found that every academic library subscribed to the same journals and had the same many volumes on their shelves. And so the idea was born to digitize all of those journals such that libraries could put their volumes into offsite storage or discard if that was their choice. And so we began creating this archive of the core scholarly academic journals, with digitized in a way that was a faithful replication of the original. And so the act of using JSTOR should be exactly the same as if you pulled that volume off of the shelf and you could see it in its entirety. And so over the years, we digitized many journals. We have over 2,000 journals. But we also found that there's more need, right? There's more need than just journals. And so we have ebooks on our platform, as well as the newer content that we're bringing in, which is primary source, text-based primary source and images. And we have images coming in from museums and all different places, and primary source collections being contributed and published to JSTOR from university libraries, special collections. So we have a whole range of all different types of content available to users, both licensed content as well as open access.
And I think a couple of other important things to know might be that The interdisciplinarity of this tool is really unusual in terms of what we're comparing it with when we talk about our databases. The reach in terms of the age of the documents. And when we talk about primary sources, at some points, these primary sources were the writings of the historical people, and they were actually contemporaneous. And so, so there's that. And it also, for many of my students who were in high school, it was their first connection with academic content. And also when you're talking about the scanning, hence the heavy PDF stuff there.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So now what is important for my students as librarians to know about JSTOR? How do we use it?
Diba, were you going to? I could see you forming an idea.
No, I was just thinking about the user journey. Go for it.
Yeah. So because there's so much content on JSTOR that covers humanities, arts, and social sciences broadly. And there is the entire run. So whenever volume 1, issue 1 of the journal was, we have digitized. So one journal we have started in the 1600s, we have that digitized, and it's pretty amazing. We also have somewhat of an embargo period. So we don't go all the way to the current. So generally between 1 and 5 years from current. So that is an important aspect in terms of like understanding the corpus.
This is a vocabulary alert. An embargo is when a journal has a limit in terms of what of their current content is published. So sometimes it's the current year doesn't make it into the database.
Yeah. And so the reason for that is that the publishers tend to be the ones to deliver the more current content. And so as we get into the next year, then that year of content comes onto JSTOR. So that is an important aspect in terms of using and knowing when it is appropriate to use JSTOR. We do have an extensive search system, and so we love it when users come and search on JSTOR. You're also able to use your library's discovery service or Google or other external systems. So there's a whole range of different ways that you can actually find JSTOR content depending on what works best for your workflow or for your users. When you're on JSTOR, there's the searching capabilities allow you to really narrow in and explore the content that you're looking for through a basic Google style search or an advanced search, which gives you much more flexibility. You're also able to use a range of like exploratory features like recommenders and citation network, things like that, that allow you to find something that you're really interested in and kind of use that as the starting point. So I think those are some of the interesting aspects of the ways people get into content on JSTOR. Diba, do you want to expand on any of that?
I mean, all of that is so beautifully put. I guess very like casually, I like to think of it as like Google for academics. So it's an array of just information for you to be able to go in and find whatever you want, but you can also trust it in a way that you can't really trust Google. Sure, Google will give you a lot of relevant stuff, but is it, to the academic standard that you need in order to do the research that you're doing? So it has that trust built in. And then also, I think that it's really cool that how we build our search engine as well as the related work or related content, recommended content, whatever you want to call it. The way that that's really built is to help you follow that train of thought that you're on. As researchers, we're all developing our point of view. As librarians, you're helping another person cultivate that point of view. And so you kind of have to follow a train of thought. And our database really does help someone kind of go down that without getting lost. So I think that's a pretty cool part of it.
Okay. So what is going on, and what in terms of the search, what makes it different? Why JSTOR? And what are some features that we should be looking at as databases evolve?
Yeah, I think so. We have this is a little inside baseball. We have a pretty extensive search team with engineers from a variety of different with a variety of different expertise. And this includes and has for years included data science engineers and machine learning. So even before we were involved in the generative AI, a lot of the work that we have done is really kind of under the covers. Yes, we develop the features and the functions that you use on the screen, but the work that goes into really understanding how to produce the right kind of results is a major focus of the work that we do. And so as we think about this transition from a traditional keyword-based search to the future, as we're bringing in more machine learning and AI, there's this concept of we call it semantic search, but really understanding the intent, the meaning behind the user's search term. And I think this is going to be such a critical aspect of understanding and teaching the searching process. And so traditionally, we have looked for the specific key terms, which words you want to do your search for, and how to construct the query in a way that expresses what you're thinking. So, how do we use the Boolean operators to create to get some precision in the search term? And as that works in some cases, sometimes it's really hard when you're trying to get something quite specific. And then when you get more specific, then you're excluding more things because you're not using the right words and things like that. As we move into a semantic search space, the system is taking on a lot more of that work for the user. And so you're able to put in a question or put in a search term that may have changed. Like 50 years ago, it may have been a different term that you used. Our system will know that that's what you mean and kind of expand it behind the scenes and really help to make the connections in a way that previously wasn't like the system didn't know what you meant, right? It was relying on your commands, and we're moving to a place where the system is able to be smart enough to understand how your string of words come together to mean something.
So it's making sense of connections among articles, among authors, but also it's compensating for synonyms and related terms. And the way I've been thinking about this lately is, I mean, we've been focused on finding the right terms, the terms that the authors use, the terms that are used in the metadata, but this is more forgiving. And so, I think about it as instead of a control F for words or phrases, you're kind of looking at a control F for concepts and ideas.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I'm wondering if you can show us a little bit. Would that be?
Yeah, I think the best way to show these concepts will be not through our search currently, because some of this, it's a little hard to demonstrate it in search because it's all behind the scenes, but using our research tool, the AI research tool that we're
Sure.
currently having in beta, I could do a bit of a demo of that, and we'll be able to zero in on how that concept matching works. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, let me share my screen. All right. Seeing that okay?
Mhm.
Great. All right. So I have, I'm going to run a search on a new concept that I learned this morning. I was watching a podcast called Absolute History. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but I always get interesting things that I want to look up after watching that. Hemline index. Are either of you familiar with this
Does it have to
concept?
do with skirts?
It does. Um,
And skirts in history?
yeah, so this is about the Roaring Twenties and
Yes.
about the recovery of the economy being mirroring the shortening of skirt length. is interesting. So I'm just going to jump into an article. This is actually a book chapter.
Mhm.
And so what happens, I'm just going to run through a whole demo here, and then we can figure out how to, like where to zoom into. So the first thing that happens here after I ran a search was right here. So it created a prompt that says, how is hemline index related to this text? So the first thing that you want to do after searching is to, like, you run a search, you've come across, I didn't see how many search results there were, but thousands of search results. Your first job that you need to do is understand how any given item is related to your search term. And so this first prompt that comes up helps you do that very, very quickly. And so what's happening here is it took my search term, hemline index, and asked the question, how is that search term related to this text? And it produces an answer here. And you can see the title doesn't say hemline index or anything like that. It's in here somewhere. But it's looking at this search term and pouring through the text of this article to find the places of that speak to your search term. And
It's
so that search
possible.
term may have even been a full sentence, but in this case, it was shorter.
So it's possible the term or the phrase hemline index doesn't even appear in the article
Exactly.
because it's not necessarily the language of the writer.
Right. Yep. And you can see even here, it says that it is also known as the bear knees bull market theory. So some articles might refer to it that way, and some might refer to it as the hemline index.
So it might have taken a researcher a very long time to determine that this vocabulary I should be using as well if I want to pick up all the relevant content.
Exactly.
Now we don't need to anticipate the many, many ways this might be expressed.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I think what it is like these are all artifacts of human thought, right? The chapters, the books, all of that kind of stuff. So it's a human being interpreting some concept and writing about it from their point of view as a researcher. And so then another researcher wants to have access to that information so that they can cultivate their own perspective, but they have to do that through a database. And so they have to learn the language of the database, which for so long has just been keywords. So there's all this mental effort that goes into trying to identify every single one instead of being able to just think about what do I want to know about this particular concept and how does it relate to other people. And so this is just supporting that, making it easier for human beings to actually connect to other concepts.
Yeah, excellent. And for those people who've never used JSTOR before, this window on the right hand was not here before.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. This is in a beta currently. Can give you instructions on how to get on our wait list. You can share that with your class.
Okay. I see more that's coming up there too.
Yeah. So I'll just give you a little bit of a overview of what's happening here. One thing that's really critical, because it's so important to know when you're working with AI, any AI system, and there's lots of them out there now, it's really critical to have some way to know and trust the response that is being given to you. And so you'll see anytime you're working with this tool, we have these footnotes embedded throughout the responses, which allows you to see exactly where this paragraph that is being used got the answer. So this very clear traceability between the original document, the original concept, and how it's being used in the AI response.
Excellent.
Context, yeah.
I thought I would, to continue on this semantic concept, I'm going to create a question here. Would either of you, I've prepared a couple questions, but I wonder if you want to ask a question about the hemline index. No.
No, I don't know what year the article was written, or the chapter was written. I might have asked for, besides the 20s, which decades in American history showed other instances of this phenomenon.
Okay, so what we see here is a nice answer. The phenomenon of the hemline index, which suggests correlation between women's skirt length and economic conditions, is evidenced particularly in the 20s and 30s. It goes on to describe how it's different in those two different decades. Again, with all the footnotes and traceability that you need to continue down the path.
Mhm.
Um,
Now, I wonder if like somebody followed this article, cited this, and was talking about it in a different context, would we be able to easily find that?
can you rephrase that or say that again?
I think what I'm looking at now that I see down there, it says show us related content.
Mm,
And also, all of that, the recommended topics.
yep.
So we don't need to dig into the metadata of that article necessarily. Instead, we're finding something that might be almost more like Amazon based, but not probably your recommender system is different from that. But
Yeah,
uh,
so let me describe. So this is all connected in with that semantic search concept that we started
right.
talking about. And so what is happening first with the question and answer, and then we'll get to the related content.
Sure.
Just like my original search that I put into the search box was hemline index, we're actually treating this whole question. How was the hemline index originally formulated? That is just a search query. It's presented here in a different way, but it's behind the scenes. It's working exactly the same way. And so what the system is doing is taking this question or this search query and understanding its meaning and then searching this whole document for the parts of the document that are relevant to that question, if that makes sense. So it's the
Mhm.
whole article, which is 23 pages long or book chapter, um, is broken into segments behind the scenes. And so it really is just executing a search for parts of the article that match.
Got it.
And so when we think about that approach, we can start to think also about related content. I'll click that. So this one takes a little bit of time. It's a pretty intensive process. So what happens here is that we are able to take essentially the full text of this article and use it, this chapter, and use it as search input to the whole corpus, all content in JSTOR, and it's searching for other documents that are conceptually similar to this one that we're looking at. So that process of deriving meaning rather than using all the key terms, we derive that meaning and then search for the same concepts elsewhere in the corpus. And that's how we produce this list of related content.
Right. So in the past, we would have to refine this based, if we were doing this seriously, we'd look at the indexing, the metadata. This is happening automatically, and it's not just stuff that might be cited by this piece or whom had been cited. It's going deeper, it's analyzing. And we talked about disciplinarity earlier. So this particular article may come up in an economics context,
Yeah,
in a fashion context, in a
exactly.
sociological context, but we're now bridging across.
Yeah. And another fun thing that the tool allows for is so this and any other recommender system generally is looking at the entirety of the document. We're actually able to, so here we have a nice paragraph about flappers and knee painting, which is not a concept I was previously familiar with, but we can select this text and get content related just to that passage rather than
Oh,
the whole
wow.
document itself. And so
That's
we
really
can,
powerful.
yeah, exactly. It really allows you to zero in on the concepts that you're interested in pursuing.
And another thing just to remember is we're going across formats. We're going journals, articles of other sorts, book chapters, books. So in addition to the disciplinarity thing, we're kind of inclusive of print formats. And I wonder if we're inclusive of artistic formats or visual formats as well.
That is coming. So I mentioned earlier that JSTOR has primary source, both text-based primary source and images.
Mhm.
The tool doesn't work on that. There's different challenges, technical challenges to work through with that content. But soon we will have the same kind of capability applied across all content, both in terms of inspecting a particular item as well as discovering across the whole corpus.
As just an aside, one of the things I love about JSTOR is the ability to search image captions, which not every source allows you to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, but back to business.
Yeah. You mentioned the recommend topics. This is another really helpful option that doing the same process of processing the entire document, we're extracting key concepts that happen throughout and present them here, up to 10 different ones. And they're presented as a list, but also as a link to a search. Like you can click them to execute a search. So this allows for a couple things. One, a very quick snapshot of what you're going to find in the document. It helps with that task of finding key terms, right? We already talked about that, how someone finds the document and then kind of scours looking for what they might search for next. So it helps with that, the vocabulary question, and then also gives you that quick path to executing the search from this point, narrowing your focus.
I'm looking at this, I'm thinking about so many times how many of us have overlooked really important content that we can now retrieve.
Exactly.
Or maybe get excited about a related topic that
Right.
we didn't even consider.
Yeah, sometimes it is a rabbit hole. It happens to me anyway. While looking for one thing, it's like, oh, this one sounds really interesting, and kind of digging into that. So I just clicked on the link here, and now we're seeing the results for women's autonomy and empowerment.
So Beth, you talked a lot about the new search power, but there's also embedded in that right box, the ability to better understand an article or have a conversation with it, or have a part that you're curious about explained.
Yeah. Yeah. Diba, you've done some good analysis on how that conversation happens and what goes on in the minds of a user. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So it depends on kind of what stage of their own research project they're at, how developed they have their own point of view has been. But we have the ability to summarize. So if you first land on this page, there's kind of like two things that you're doing, right? You're like, okay, what is this thing? Is it relevant to me? And sometimes these documents can be gargantuan. You don't want to spend too much time on, the 40 documents that you have to be reviewing. So you kind of need to
The
make these
TLDR thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
Yeah. So it can function as a kind of filtering mechanism, and it can also kind of function as for lack of a better word, like a cliff notes. And the context of that is, so you are assigned reading, and you need to make sure that you understand this material because you're going to be tested on it. You're going to have to write things on it. Da, da, da. And so usually what students do is they go find a cliff note. So they try to find a summary somewhere, a YouTube video, something, right? But what they can also use the summarize feature for is just seeing the TLDR so that when they are investigating the material and going into it, it's kind of like, okay, did I get it right? Am I like following this? Do I have a different point of view on it? Maybe I do. And then that's something you can talk to the teacher about. So it offers a few different kind of functionalities. So that's the summary one.
I will throw in one data point about the summary. It on JSTOR, given the content that we have, only about 10% of the entire corpus of over 2 million items actually have an abstract, right? That is not generally practiced in the humanities. And so there's no abstract. How do you sit down and get a quick sense of what this item is about? Basically, without a feature like this, for 90% of the content, the user is required to actually page through and read the article. And how time consuming is that when most of what you find isn't actually what you're looking for, right? You have to spend so much time weeding out the things that aren't interesting just to find the ones that are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
like
interesting, abstracts are not really summaries all the time, are they?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. And again, like the point of a researcher is to develop a perspective. And so you need to understand the other perspective so you can formulate your own. So this isn't taking away from that at all. The other thing that we have here is the Q&A, so question and answer. And people can write full form questions in here about the item in particular. So maybe they're looking to see if a certain word is used, or they're trying to understand a little bit more about what it's about, if it asks one thing in a different way or uses a term in a different way. Yeah, so there you go. Does it mention flappers?
A lot of times.
A lot of times, yeah. So it really helps investigating the material a little bit more. Um, our desire is to help people understand in ways that make sense to them based on the perspective that they're cultivating, and develop more of a relationship to the item itself, kind of create their own relationship to that item. And so being able to ask questions in ways that make sense based on the perspective that they're creating is what the Q&A is kind of doing. Yeah.
So I understand that even more is coming relating to generative AI and JSTOR. Can you give us a preview? Or
Yeah,
did you
we
want to
can
stay
talk
on this a
about it.
little bit longer?
Yeah. So everything that we've looked at so far has been this research tool being on the item page in relation to the document that you're viewing. And so currently it is supporting this use case of really talking to the article, interrogating the document to see what is in there, develop your understanding. And we started with this place because of our desire to have that really tight connection between the response and the document, that the place where the response got its knowledge, right? And so that was super critical for us to be able to develop trust in the tool that we're building, knowing that trust in AI is wide ranging. We wanted to be in a solid trust position. And so some of the things that we're doing, one, and this is a great example, is that we want to retain that same concept of when you use this tool, you know where the content is coming from, you can trust it, it is clear. And so, but we also know that to do that really well in our space, we want to be able to use it across more content than just the one item. And so the first thing that we did here was to say, if this is a book chapter, the book usually is, or quite often is on the same topic, right? And so maybe you want to say, okay, the way this chapter could answer my question wasn't satisfactory. Like this one says, this document does not provide information on the question I asked. So then you can say, show me answers from the whole book.
Oh,
And so it is rerunning that question against all chapters in the book. It still doesn't answer my question, which is okay. But you can see how this is expanding the understanding and the scope of the discussion. And so we're going to continue to push on that. So for example, we will be bringing this same tool into the search results experience. So you've got on your first page, you have 25 items. We talked about efficiency. It's like, wouldn't it be great if you were able to do this kind of initial inspection across your 5 favorite items in that results instead of going one by one, right? Let's put this capability up a level so that it can really help you inspect and understand your results before you really dig into the items that you are looking for.
I'm curious about how the results are going to be ranked. What will that look like?
Oh, so what we are working on, so I described the semantic search concept.
Mhm.
And so in a pure semantic search world, which you can see in our search here. Let me just go over to this other one. In this experimental tab, which we didn't talk about, but this is just a pure semantic search results. The way that they are ranked here is so just let me describe in some technical terms what's happening. So behind the scenes, we are creating basically a numerical representation of this query. And then we have numerical representations of all of the content within all of the corpus. And so the way that we determine whether or not the item is relevant is the similarity of those numerical representations. If the numbers are closer, they are more conceptually related to each other. And so this would be ranked with the highest number, the closest match at the top, all the way down to the furthest. But going forward, we know that just a pure semantic search experience is not going to cut it. There are some searches where you actually need the keyword search. You're not looking for the concept, you're looking for those exact words. And
Mhm.
so what we're working on now is really the way to blend those two methods together so that when you're looking for a specific thing, we know it and we're giving you the right results. When you're looking for concepts, we know it and we're giving you the right results. And so that is all some technical magic that is happening. So when it's time for that to be all blended together, there will be some sort of relevance score that we generate based on the different factors.
Okay.
Um,
Can I
yeah.
combine those features with filters and facets and the stuff that has always been part of JSTOR?
Yeah, right now you don't see that in here, but as we do this work to bring the two methods of searching together, you will have that, and we'll be able to do more things. For example, over here you saw these generated topics, right? We're able to extract topics. We may be able to have filters and different ways to explore the results based on these rather than our set facets that we have, we may be able to do more dynamic filtering based on the content itself. So lots of interesting things being explored there.
Can I ask you, I'm trying to understand retrieval augmented generation.
Yeah.
Is this an example of that?
Yep, 100%. So we like the term semantic search. It is synonymous with RAG or retrieval augmented generation. Yeah. So that's exact when we're doing this question and answer, that's exactly what is happening.
Okay, and what I'm seeing right now is that there's a very quick dismissing of a lot of these new tools as part of what a traditional search, well, not erase the word traditional, but I'm
Mhm.
presenting to a lot of library or doing a lot of library workshops and saying, hey, look out, this is coming. This is going to bring the best of the two worlds together, the ability to have conversations with the system and the corpus that we respect being present. And I'm finding that people either don't believe me or are so suspicious that they can't get over their fear of
Ah,
generative AI and the notion of hallucinations that I can't seem to say, but wait a minute, it's coming. And
yeah.
this is one of our early examples. What do
Yeah,
you see
we're
coming down the
seeing the
road? Yeah.
same. We're seeing the same thing. We have people like you that we talk to or who are very excited about it and can see the opportunities. And then, like you said, there are some skeptics out there who don't necessarily see how this kind of thing can be helpful. And so, to your point about the hallucinations, this is exactly the reason why we started with that small scope that I described and have this clear traceability by um, using only the content that we define. So either this item that we're looking at, or your items in your search results, or your items in your workspace folder. We're controlling the input into that to the response that's given. We have very clear instructions in our prompts behind the scenes that say, do not, hey, LLM, we're working with multiple LLMs. It's like, hey, use this content only to answer the question. Do not use your world of knowledge that you have gotten through all of your training. Like, we know you could answer this question, but we're not asking you to do that. Really, we're just asking you to answer this question using this content. And you can see that the evidence that we're doing that is this question that can't be answered. Right? It's not providing me an answer because it does not exist within the document that we're looking at. So
Right.
hallucinations can still happen within that scope. Like, it might give an inaccurate result or pull some data from another part of the article. Right. So it can create inaccurate results, but we can still point to where and why that is happening. And I think that is such a huge part of the tool that we're building, and why we're really getting traction with it and developing that trust relationship that's different than a lot of the systems out there, which are trying to do everything they can to answer the questions for the users.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
We are rather working to support the academic process and help the user through the tasks that they need to do, rather than just give them the thing that they're looking for.
So you seem to be on the forefront of this. Do you see your competitors or your friends in the rest of the database world moving in this direction?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, like, technically, our system is very similar to the other systems that are out there, right? It's doing roughly the same thing. We have taken a very principled approach to the choices and the logic we build into that system, um, so that we can really be in a place of trust, to help those critics and those people who are skeptical really see what's going on and see the value. It's taking time. That's more time consuming to take the approach that we're taking. And so for the other kind of for-profit organizations that are out there, they took a faster to market path than we did, because we are so focused on this learning and really getting it right. So there's nothing to say that they won't just they'll see successes and do the same thing. It's possible that that'll happen. But right now, I think that principled approach that we're taking, it really is different than some of the other systems out there.
Got it. So this is really powerful. I want to make sure I respect your time and and have my students have a really digestible session here. So what we're seeing some real power. We've long loved this database. At least many of us have. I have. The content is fabulous. We in this class are learning all the tricks. We're learning how to create a search query, what syntax looks like, the insides of a database, what librarians need to know. So you can combine all of that, but also crack the insides of that database open so that the average user, and I know Viva's thinking about this, doesn't necessarily need to know what's under the hood. That they can have a conversation with the database and be successful. They can have a conversation with an article and get more context and understanding. And this is very different and really powerful. So for those of us who are learning dialogue and learning that stuff, okay, this is good. It's spinach for us. It's going to help us get healthier in terms of our skills, but also introducing our patrons, users, students, patients to this sort of approach is also really powerful. And an end user can feel that same kind of satisfaction.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. We also have an intention as we get into some institutions. We'll be turning this beta on for some number of institutions in the fall semester. one of the things that we want to do there is really work with the librarians at that institution to understand how they teach the tool and what level of visibility, right? A freshman isn't going to need to understand how the system is working, but a librarian may need to in order to teach it properly. And so we're really looking at that. How do we use this as a teaching tool as well? So you can expect to see some developments in that space in the near future as well.
Well, I'm very excited. Is there any final word you want to leave with my students who are just entering this profession?
What do you think, Diba?
Um, I think, yeah, understanding how these systems work is going to be very important, and also just continuing the work that a lot of librarians do, which is helping people cultivate their perspectives. Like that's going to become even more important. So, what are you asking? Why do you want to know it? What are the assumptions that you have underneath it? And then how can we create some questions that will get what you want so that you can create a really holistic point of view? Like that's become more and more important. So, you know,
Yeah,
keeping that in
the
mind.
mechanics of research is going to change, right? The way that you teach, like the methods that you teach are going to change. And I think it's going to really shift, as Diba was describing, from the steps that you take to do your research to really focusing in on the thought process and developing that judgment and your point of view. I think that will be like that's really where the learning happens, not in the constructing of a Boolean query. And so really focusing in on the what are you trying to learn? Like we're going to get to put that front and center kind of for once, right? That's always
Yeah.
been the heart of it, but it's been so hard to get at it. We're making that
Right.
part simple so you can
Yeah, so
focus.
there's less of a secret code that people need to know. But also another part of this, and I'm delighted that we met at ALA, is that you can actually talk to developers, you can talk to the researchers who are behind the scenes at the databases. We're customers. And we have the ability to offer feedback. We have the ability to involve ourselves in betas, to join focus groups, and to really have conversations with the people behind the system, which I've always found really fun
Mhm.
and also a professional responsibility. So I hope my students will continue to connect with the people they meet here in Voices of Search, but also at conferences.
Yeah.
So
And
thank
we're
you.
always happy to connect and talk more.